This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with Gizem Cetgin, originally from a military family in Turkey, and now living in Raleigh, North Carolina. The successful engineer and innovation consultant turned her back in her career when she experienced so much disconnection with people in the workplace. She started her own business, Omnipresence Consulting, helping teams to connect again, and she says we should all show up with love. Let's chat with Gizem. Hi, Gizem. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Greg. How are you doing?
Good. A huge welcome to the Win Happy podcast.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We were doing a little practice run with your name before we hit the record button, so I'm going to go for it again now. Is that okay?
Gizem with the hard G, like give or gift, Gizem.
Gizem and Cetgin.
Yes, correct. Gizem Cetgin is my name.
I nearly got that right. And you've had a really unusual journey. And I met you on this wonderful thing called Lunch Club that brings a lot of us together from all over the globe with similar interests in different things. Your story is very, very unusual because I know you're from Turkey, a place where I've been to a few times. And you're not in Turkey anymore, but you're in a country which has good weather a lot of the time as well, which isn't a bad thing. I'm going to ask you a very simple question, and we'll maybe take the conversation from there. So, who are you and where did you come from?
Oh, wow. I guess the who are you question is a little bit complex. I always pause to answer this. Do I talk about my profession? Do I talk about my personality? How do we decide that question? So I'll just give you a broad answer and we collect the pieces from the professional and the personal pieces. So I was born and raised in Turkey, and after graduating and working for a while, I decided to come to the United States to get my MBA. And my background is in engineering, chemical engineering to be specific. And I decided that wasn't going to be my path and came to the United States. After the MBA program, I pretty much focused on innovation and consulting and management consulting and strategy. And that really allowed me to see a few things about who I am and what I want to do, what I see, what I value. And that was about the people problems that we name at work. When we talk about strategy, process, decision making, there's lots of things that we know as best practices. But what I saw was really the core of the problem usually connects back to the people issues. And I got really interested in that. And I discovered my own passion and talents in that process. And I decided to leave my corporate role and decided to launch my own company. It's just called Omnipresence Consulting. And what we do with this company is really focusing on that fulfillment, innovation, meaning, and high performance. And it's really infused with Eastern philosophies and the science of teaming and the high performance. I love that holistic approach because, first of all, what resonates with me in my personal journey, but also it allows me to go deeper with people. It allows me to help them get to a point of living their life from a place of awareness, resonance, and choice, which really reflects my personal values as well. So I'm really interested in living my life fully, being happy where I am, spending quality time with people I love, get up and feel that there's so much that I can give, that I can receive from life. And practically, I guess I love also being in that nature. I was just listening to your stories in Ireland, and I'm fascinated by the green spaces. I live in a very green space as well, where I can go to the mountains and hike for hours. I love backpacking, camping. I love cooking meals from scratch. yeah, I guess this gives you like a broad idea of who I am.
Yeah, and I like for the listener to get to know my guests a little bit and the young version of you growing up in Turkey and Istanbul, isn't it?
Hmm.
And
I grew
with
up
an
all
engineering
over, in
mind.
fact.
Yeah. Okay. Can you tell me about the young version of you and what your mum and dad did and
Mm.
how your brain worked?
Well, yeah, I grew up in a military family, which is the reason why we lived all over the country, including the very east part of the country. There are maybe like 300 people as a population with very little means for education or any other supportive conditions. And it was a lot of contrast, right? One year we live in Istanbul, there's everything, and the next year we're living on the east side of the country. I'm in a school where first graders and fifth graders are all in one class. There's only one teacher. I think that was made me resilient, I suppose, as a kid to be able to leave a set of conditions and be adaptive in another. And my family gave me a lot of love and support in a sense that, they made me believe that I can do anything. It didn't matter that I grew up in a village. It didn't matter I come from a low to middle class family. There's always something to do. There's always help. There's always possibility. My parents trusted me so much with my decisions. I think that's the biggest gift that they have given me. And unfortunately, the Turkish system is pretty much exams and making kids sit and study their entire lives until they get to that adult stage. So I study so much. I worked a lot, and there are schools that you need to get to the then next to the next best schools and the next best schools, and that was my aim, and that's what I did. I became an engineer because I thought that's what I needed to do to be able to make good money, be respectable, have a good place in the society. You got to be an either engineer, lawyer, or a doctor in a country like Turkey. That's what I believed, I should say. That's what I received from my environment. My parents did not force me. It's just my environment supported that notion. And I became an engineer. And I'm grateful for that journey. The school that I got into taught me a lot, gave me this analytical mind for sure. At the same time, uh, sometimes wish that I had a time to explore my other interests. I loved language. I loved social studies. Just would have loved to study more. But, I'm doing it right now. So I guess there's no loss.
Well, you were in the production line for the workforce, weren't you? Like so many others
Yeah,
of us.
exactly.
And your dad, you say it was a military family. Was he in the army?
He was.
My dad did 2 years in the American army.
Mm,
They emigrated in the late 50s. And I think when that happens, you can be drafted in. So he did 2 years. He didn't see any real war stuff or anything like that, but he did serve. My mother always says he changed from being a kind of shy, green-eyed Irishman to being a man of the world suddenly, and it was very
mm,
transformational for him. The conversations around the table when your dad is in the army, what are they like? Would
mm,
he have brought some of that to the kitchen table, or did all of
mm.
that stay outside?
I mean, as a kid, I could definitely feel the tension. We lived in high conflict areas where Turkish and Kurdish people were fighting, and I would hear the stories because my dad's friends would come over and mention what's going on, and I know that my dad had a really hard time being in that situation. A lot of personal conflict to be able to go fight. So I know it affected him deeply, and I know that it affected in a way that he's such a humorous, bright, and gregarious person, and I know that in time I could feel that it's being replaced by more silence and And sadly, in time, depression, right? It happens to a lot of military personnel. If they don't receive the right help, they don't have the right context, that can happen. And unfortunately, that's one of the things that we experience as a family, because it's really high conflict, and you're human, and you're fighting against other human, and there's really, maybe you're not agreeing with the fight, maybe it's not your own fight, but you just have to do what's told. So I think, yeah, my dad's passion for discipline and his humor was always there. But in time, I could sense definitely the changes.
And it sounds like you witness those changes for yourself day after day with him.
Yeah, yeah, and we're still dealing with that. To be honest, my dad left the military for years and years ago, but the residue stays. What he's seen, what he's experienced, and what he's able to overcome and not overcome stayed with him. And I love my dad. I mean, he's my personal hero, right? But sometimes we change roles. I have to be the stronger one. I have to be the listener so that he finds the strength to move forward.
Yeah, in the last podcast, I spoke with Mary Doherty, and she was very senior in the Irish police force. And I think she was heavily involved in sexual crimes.
Mm.
And I think she spoke a lot about how all of this does you damage as time goes on, and it does change you. And I think part of our survival mechanism is that you need to be immune to some of these things and shut down some of your emotions and maybe become a bit harder within yourself. And she was involved in a very, very serious car crash. And when the ambulances came to take her away, her concern was her laptop, and the confidential information that was on her laptop.
Mm.
And I think that was a
Yeah.
big moment for her, that she was, I think, pretty much half dead, and it was still work, work, work. And maybe we just end up functioning like that as
Mm.
human beings. I can't imagine what it's like for a person to go to work every day knowing that this could be, a life-threatening day, and doing that day in, day
Mm-hmm.
out. Saying goodbye to your wife and your children and your little girl, and see you later, guys. and,
Yeah.
and not knowing what that day is going to be. And of course, in Ireland at the moment, we have a lot of those mothers and daughters, because we have a lot of Ukrainian refugees here at the moment. So, it's very close to home,
Mm.
which is probably an unusual thing for people in Ireland, because, Ireland really hasn't been involved in too many conflicts. So what was that like for you, knowing your dad was in danger every day? Did you kind of carry that fear and that worry?
Mm. Subconsciously, possibly. I don't know. I guess the idea of resilience comes back to me when you ask this question. Perhaps I was more focused on the positive, and I was supported in doing so. My mom, she's a very positive person. And I think my dad did his best to also still be a dad, play with me, spend time with me. Perhaps those things shielded me a little bit from constantly thinking there's a danger. And I mean, I was just a kid, just focusing on my friends and playing outside and what's in school. So I don't quite remember it to be a traumatic. I mean, there are points that I can remember there was traumatic events, but not a constant thinking. And I think I want to talk about a little bit of another person in my family, my aunt, who raised me with lots of different books and Eastern philosophies. And she really taught me a lot of information about personal growth. At a very early age, I started receiving this information, which then supported me to really think differently about what's going on in the world, and to then have a choice in where to focus, reframing what's going on in the world so that I could, find a more positive space to exist. And that continued over my life. I think that set the foundation, to be honest, like being exposed to such conflict and uncertainty, constant change, train me to then to be able to do that later in my life.
Okay. And the young Gizem, when you're in school, and when for whatever reason the teacher has totally and utterly lost your attention and you're dreaming, where do you go in those dreams?
Oh, I wanted to travel so much. When people ask me, who do you want to be? What kind of profession do you want to have? I would always say a traveler. I didn't know even what that meant, but the desire to go see the world, experience different cultures, food, language was so present, you know, as long as I can remember myself. So yeah, I guess I would be just dreaming of going somewhere else. And my dad and I, we would watch these shows, right? Travel shows and people just visiting other countries. Maybe that left a huge impression on me. I thought I would be one of those people.
And that analytic engineering mind, where did that come from? How was that nurtured?
You know, my parents tell me that that was very obvious, evident from a very early age. I'm a very logical person. Like I would argue with my parents if something is not logical, and I would demand, I would demand that,
Your poor
they.
parents.
Yeah, I agree, and a very strong-willed kid that they say I was. So yeah, I think it's just the way that I was born. And then my training and education just added on to that. And it's still here. I mean, I still seek a lot of structure and chain of logic in everything that I inquire. But at the same time, I'm also learning to let go of that because it's just one part of the coin. There's intuition, there's feelings, there's emotions. And that has been also coexistent for me.
Yeah, and you living in that emotional world as opposed to that logical,
Mm,
analytical world. That's a big achievement for anyone, really, because a lot of the times they're kind of poles apart and they don't automatically work together. You know, when you analyze, and I know you do that in part of your work, the psychosomatic testing, that a lot of
mm.
people kind of live in one of those boxes, don't they? That emotional box or that very analytical one. But you've managed to cross from one side to the other, or maybe live quite happily with both of them.
You know, I don't know if I ever fully transform that. That's just a part of my brain. The way it works is fine. There was a point that I found it to be a problem. It would get in the way, especially when I was learning how to meditate. Just wasn't getting introduced to the concept of what it means to be just be instead of ruminating or worrying about the next thing. It was a challenge. But then I think right now I learned that it's like a dial. I can dial it up or dial down from context to context. It works. For instance, I'm an executive coach. So if I'm talking to someone really analytical with an engineering background, that really works because I can relate to them and we can process it together. But in the case of, I just wanted to be with someone and be there without analyzing their problem, and all they need is just my presence. And there's no reason for my analytical brain to come in and interject. So I think it's just learning how to value and use parts of who I am and allow other parts to emerge.
The move from Turkey to the United States, and I know you're in North Carolina now. How did that come about?
Yeah, I was in my first management consulting job and I was working, I don't know, so many hours. And I decided that my life was going to be like that if I stayed in that role. And I started looking for options. And prior to that role, I came to United States as a exchange student for a semester. Of all the places I went to Oklahoma, it's funny, but it really gave me a good perspective of what United States is like and pursuing educational opportunities. So I decided to get my MBA. And that was the model that I was seeing also in my environment, that people accelerate their career by going into MBA. And then I did my research. People told me that, MBA programs are really expensive. And I said, no, I will get a scholarship. And then I applied to a couple of schools that would give me scholarship, and North Carolina University, State University is one of them. And they graciously gave me a full scholarship, and that's how I ended up in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I live right now.
And the culture shock between Turkey and the United States, that's pretty much night and day, I'm guessing.
You know, yes and no. So I lived in Istanbul in my university years, and when I worked, that's a very metropolitan city. I think it's quite like New York City in many ways. But I came to a smaller city. Raleigh is a way smaller city than New York City. It was a shock in the sense that I perceived that there's not much to do. There's no art, there's no, movies, theaters, and things like that in a scale that I was used to. In time, Raleigh became a much bigger city, but I think that transition was interesting, but also culturally in terms of how people treat each other, the depth of relationships was completely different. In Turkey, people are not as nice at the surface. They could be nice, but I think um, genuine connection, directness, they are more valued. Here in the United States, my perception was that like niceness is important and relationship stays at the surface. Um, Especially in an MBA environment, right? So you're making a lot of professional connections and conversation stays at a certain level. And I had to learn that. I had to transform that and seek out relationships that are deeper. It's not to say, the conversations cannot go deeper. I just had to find out my way to how to initiate them, how to build those relationships. But it was in the beginning very difficult. I struggled feeling at home and connected and supported for sure. And also wanting to go somewhere else like New York City or California, which I did a little bit. And I came back because I realized what I really value is just access to nature. And by then I had already so many good connections in this area, like really good friends. So yeah, I hope that answers.
Yeah, and your working career then in the United States, that took you to a few different kind of research roles, is what I understand.
Yeah, so the MBA program, I was focused on innovation. Then I went into innovation analyst role, which is doing a lot of research and trend analysis to create the next strategy for the company that I was working for. And then that evolved into innovation consulting, which was being in between the startup ecosystem and the financial services company that I work for, and cultivating all that information from the ecosystem to bring it back to the company so that the leaders are aware of what's going on, so that they can make decisions in terms of what to adopt from the new technologies and services and products. Yeah, it was a really, really cool role to be in the innovation space, thinking about what's next, what's possible, pushing the envelope on what is possible. I love that role, actually. It was really fun place to be in. And at the same time, of course, it comes with frustrations. Organizations are not always ready to move forward, and there's pockets that are ready, pockets are not ready. Um, yeah, so just like any other job, I think I had great times and great challenges as well.
Yeah, and the analytical Gizem, as well as doing the work, you're also analyzing people and how they interact with each other and all of that. What were you learning and what were you observing?
Great question, because that question is really the reason why ultimately I decided to change my career. But what I was seeing is people have a lot of resources, people have a lot of things that are material, and in terms of checking the boxes, there are lots of right in their lives, yet there's so much suffering. There's so much suffering. I would say physically going to work and meeting people in person, the question like, how are you doing? And the answer I would probably hear is just getting by, or not, can't complain. these are just words, but really, if you dug into it, there's a level of dissatisfaction and numbness and just survival. Although they might be in a really high paying job, they have great titles. So that made me really interested what is going on in these organizations, and not only the organizations that I work with, but like I interacted with a lot of startup ecosystems and different companies. Just a general human condition that I was observing. Of course, there's exceptions. Of course, there are people who are incredibly energetic and they love their work. They come with purpose, all of that kind of stuff. But the average was very interesting. Disconnection, I think, was the uh, major issue that I recognized. This is for me as well, right? I was part of that system, was going to work, was excited about certain things, but in time I lost my connection to work. And there are two things in that. Of course, the system that you might be facing, but the other thing is just losing self-efficacy, just starting to believe that there's nothing you can choose or do to change things. And you have no choice over your own experience. I think you start to believe that. And I've seen that in my colleagues and my peers. And I decided to look deeper into that. And the more I observe, I saw that what makes people really disconnected is disconnection from within and from the people they work with, right? There's meaning that we can cultivate by serving each other, but that's just becomes very normalized in the background and forget about it. And we focus on the tasks and the processes and things like that, which then makes our work just one dimensional and strips the meaning, right? And yeah. And the third thing probably was when problems are happening in the room, it's just because people don't have the language and the tools to navigate emotional intelligence. They don't know how to navigate their own ego and the other person's ego, right? And these are actually really basic skill sets. However, we're never taught them in school. I don't know if anyone who had an education included emotional intelligence, to be honest. Now, new kids maybe are going to these new schools. But back in my time, and I know in many generations before, this wasn't even a conversation. So we're not giving an opportunity to cultivate these skill sets. We're not really embodying these at work. We may be talking about them because it's the new best practice, but really, like what it means to embody these things as a person, as a leader, as a company, that's where I started getting really interested in.
You were so right, because we say things like, that place is terrible, I hate work. We use the word they as if, well, who are the they people? Who are the they that you keep on talking about? Because you bring yourself through that door and you're an active part of what they looks like. You're one of the players. You make up that entity, and how you behave and how you interact with others. It's all part of it. So in a way, there's never a they, is there? There's an us and there's me in the middle of all of that, and what you decide to bring. So your observation skills, the decision to, I'm out of here, I'm going to do my own thing, and taking on board the kind of practical learning, so that in your own business, omnipresence consulting and coaching, you obviously have to learn some new tricks and new tools and some new learning. So could you tell me about the decision to I'm out of here, when that happened? What was that point? And were you doing learning, kind of bringing yourself up to that point, or did all of that learning happen after?
So I was in the innovation space, and one of the things that you learn in the value of experimentation, the value of just taking action and learning by doing, basically. And I was doing that before I left my job. I started creating workshops where I would invite people that I know from work, my peers, my friends, and I would just get feedback on what it is like to be in this workshop, what it changes for them. And way before then, I got my coaching certification. So I was already coaching on the side. And I was observing myself, how I enjoy that, how I add value. Is this a major skill set for me? And it was immediately a click for me when I started coaching. It felt so natural. I got such good feedback. And immediately I knew I identify as a way of serving. After doing a couple of iterations with the workshops that I offer, so those workshops mainly about mindset, being able to create awareness to see how you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're acting, how you're acting, and your outcomes based on that, and cultivating that presence and awareness. I decided that this is really resonating because I can't just stop reading and learning and training myself. It just felt so good. Nothing in my life felt this way. Because before, I think I was doing things because I thought I should do them. Engineering was one of those things, and then management consulting and the MBA, all of that. I thought I could do it. It's possible and it will give me a good return. But this one was, I didn't know that what kind of a return I was going to get. I just felt incredibly energized and interested and curious. And I decided to follow that because, when I look at research and all the people that I respect, they gave the same answer and advice, which is follow your curiosity, follow your heart. And and I started doing them. And Greg, to be honest, I didn't say I'm going to go create a company. I said, I know that this role is not exactly what I need to be doing. I just need to leave that and I need to take 6 months off. And I need some time to reset and find my way. And this was just before the pandemic. My fiance and I, we decided to go to 12 different countries. Here's the traveler comes in. My dream as a kid. And just wanted to travel, just be and take a breather. But then pandemic happened. We couldn't do that. And we did different things such as being in nature, camping, farming, and then going to Thailand, living there for a year. And all those opportunities, I think, really allow me to undo my conditioning and uh, my fear also, just step outside of this comfort zone and also be open to what's emerging. What do people want? What do they need? Where can I be helpful? And the opportunities to really emerge. I had a couple of iterations. I was focusing on more personal coaching, then it evolved into more corporate partnerships. And then I got my certifications and trainings focusing on teams, doing the work in a team setting. So, yeah, I think I love the emergence principle, and I'm really wanting to learn, practicing to live by that principle of emergence rather than just making long-winded plans.
Could you explain the emergence principle to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few ways of approaching that, I suppose. Otto Scharmer, Theory U, he's the most scientific, perspective on that. Otto Scharmer, which is said that there's information flowing all around us. And when we're not truly listening, when we're not stopping to really consider what's in front of us, we're really projecting the information that is coming from the past. And that is not the truth anymore. And that already boxes our thinking capability, our creativity, and the opportunity in front of us. So instead of projecting, coming up with plans with what we know from the past, we should focus on our listening capacities, to be silent, to be present, and from there being able to allow what's emerging, meaning being patient and being observant and giving possibility to multiple things that you may not consider before. So that's more the scientific view. But then, there's lots of Eastern philosophies that talks about the flow of life and living by the flow of life instead of dictating a preference and planned way of living, which I am learning how to do that. More listening and trusting. I think that's a big word. Trusting that in this flow of life, there's a space for me that I can contribute, that I can live my life by feeling supported and nurtured and cared for, and instead of like I'm all alone and I gotta do this thing. I have to achieve, check the boxes, otherwise I'm unsafe, right? So, yeah, flow of life, I guess that's the best word that I can find.
Yeah, because you spoke earlier about that treadmill of education,
Mm,
working hard and studying and then getting your dream job and then buying your car and your house, and it's all head down and career, career, career. And the career invariably for a lot of people has you in those work situations, and they can be good environments or toxic environments depending on the makeup of the people who are in the middle of it. It's so difficult to get off that treadmill, Jeekers Almighty.
oh,
Before you know
oh,
it,
yeah.
you're 60. And how did I get here?
Mm.
And you obviously learn from your past. We're talking about looking backwards 100%, and you're conditioned to behave in a particular way. And something probably needs to happen,
Mm.
be it a course you trip over or someone you meet along the way that allows you, or maybe puts a spotlight on that opportunity to take a breather so you can observe. I think maybe COVID did that for a lot of people. If you were
Mm.
lucky enough not to be sick and maybe stop what you were doing for a while. And I think financial worry has a lot of people kind of locked in as well.
Mm.
I'm not sure your circumstances, but it sounds like you were able to step off for a while and take that 6 months off. I think a lot of people are, is it 2 or 3 paychecks away from being at the side of the street. That learning, where did that come for you? In your life and in your career, at what period did you learn the most, and what opened the door to that learning?
So as I said, I think I grew up with my aunt's guidance, which is she's disabled. She was disabled at an age of 17 and could not walk anymore, and she did not accept that as a any limiting condition. And she did everything from driving to going to all kinds of workshops to really improve herself, to completing the university, all kinds of things. And there's incredible resilience and stamina and self empowerment that she embodies. And from there, she was able to question the meaning of religion and all that kind of spiritual journey that she's gone through. And she's given me a whole lot to process all my life as, the spiritual information, I would say. But not until I was in my late 20s that I actually was put in a position to walk the walk. I was in a marriage, and that marriage ended in a very unexpected way, and I was really depressed and really suffering from that. I was all alone in the United States. All my support system disappeared with that relationship, and in that loneliness and um, uncertainty, I think I had to really step into that. What is this information that I have heard from my aunt for so long? And I intellectually understand it. I know it to be true, which is all about, awareness and consciousness and cultivating happiness within. And I had to really learn how to do that. Deep depression helped me transform and use that opportunity, use that situation and turn into an opportunity. It was like a springboard. Truly after that, I was able to be more intentional in my life in terms of what I want and why do I do the things that I do. And that started inquiry at work as well, to your point, observing other people and what am I really enjoying, where I can be most useful. There was a point that I felt that I knew that I had to find a way that I don't separate my work self and my personal self. There's got to be a way that I can integrate both and offer that and be that regardless of the work that I'm doing. Um, and then after I decided to, leave my job and walk through, to your point, there was a teacher that appeared in my life, and her name is Dr. Caroline Fuqua, and I learned tremendously from her. I studied Egyptian mysticism with her. So there's a lot of tools and interesting mythical stories that you learn to help me understand the human journey and how to find empowerment and how to find meaning. So I think those critical moments, my aunt's teachings, divorce, and then finding this teacher really supported me to feel like I have a choice. Yeah.
I saw a beautiful statement written by you. I think it was on your LinkedIn profile. Isn't LinkedIn so good? If you maintain it, you can really learn a lot about people. And as well as this particular statement, I think it was in a post by you. I saw some of the really powerful recommendations that people had left on your profile. Obviously, people that you had coached, but there was also a recommendation by someone you clearly worked with, and I'm getting a sense of who you are and how appreciated you are. But your statement went, the power of thinking and possibilities and showing up with love. I get the power of thinking of possibilities, but the showing up with love, that's not something you hear at all, is it really, in a work context or in a business context? So that powerful statement and how you bring that with you in the work that you do. Could you chat to me about that and how you go about your work?
Yeah. I think that love is foundation for everything for me. The work that I do, how I live my life, all my relationships. That's what I aspire to, I should say. Not always I can show up with that, but that's my guiding post for sure. Um, I see love as an offering, as a way of connecting. So people feel it. People know where you're coming from. People know when you ask questions without caring for them versus you're really in this inquiry and you're seeing them as this incredible being with a unique journey, with unique talents. You have no idea about what they're capable of. And you're just keeping them in that vision and coming from that place when you interact with them, they feel that, right? That's how I want to be treated for sure. So when I left my corporate role and started doing this work, I just decided that that's just going to be the foundation of everything I do in my every offering, just to see people, to honor them, to really offer them what they truly deserve, right? Which is the respect and the connection. So when I go to a workshop, say, or at a team meeting, not only individually, I try to take some time beforehand to really think about what I get to give. Because usually my ego says, this is about me. Am I going to look good? Am I going to say the right thing? Right? What they're going to think about me. So it's so easy to make my work about me, especially on the face of my company. But then I understand that's just a human thing that happens in my mind. But then I try to turn my attention to really what would be really cool to give. Really, like what is it really in this room possible to give? And that really guides me in any conversation. And I think that's felt as love. And the third thing that I want to say, I used to believe that you can correct people. You can correct people by giving them feedback, by telling them what's wrong. And I think it's a very ineffective way of doing that. When we focus on love, praise, gratitude, I think people automatically want to do better. So I think there's an approach that I've taken to really not to sugarcoat anything, not to like create blind spots or anything, but really elevate people to a point that they can look at themselves from that view and they say, well, these are the things that I want to change. These are the things I don't want to do. And perhaps that's felt as love as well. So yeah.
Okay, love is all you need, eh? I read as well in your material, and you were talking about the 6 team conditions.
Mm.
Is that a particular process that you follow with teams?
Yes, so that's a team diagnostic survey, Ruth Fagaman's methodology. It's a company that does an incredible job of creating assessments for team environments, helping leaders make decisions about their teams, what they need to be an effective team. So I got trained in that methodology, which is being able to go to a team environment and assess the team and decide what's needed. And that's called 6 team conditions. It's not my work, but I'm trained in that.
Okay, so it's a diagnosis tool that you use as part of your work, and
Exactly.
then you kick in and then you start working with the teams. And as part of your work, sometimes you bring these teams to wonderful places like Montana. Can you tell me about that recent trip? I'm just so jealous. I saw a photograph
Yeah.
on your on your
Oh,
LinkedIn account.
that was incredible. I am so delighted to be, going on a journey with a team like that. First of all, the team was amazing, incredible, high performing team, which is always a dream for a consultant to work with. And the other thing, I keep mentioning my love for nature. So to be out in nature, to give them an opportunity for people to really connect with nature, connect with themselves, was an incredible, incredible opportunity for me. So I think the work that I have been set out to do is this holistic work. So when teams come together, not only talk about strategy and process, but really talk about what makes them a team, what creates connection. And people use the word team building, but I talk more about the relationship intelligence, cultivating relationship intelligence, which is dropping deeper to really see each other as human beings, having a just like me mindset, and from there focusing on the benefit of whole rather than themselves. Now, that can look like navigating conflict, creating a deep democracy, a deep inclusion within the environment, being able to have hard conversations, and then creatively think together to create the next thing, right? Align around a vision. So, all these things that we do, I do it with a blend of different tools. There's for instance, the six team conditions, which is a scientific tool, but also we get up and we breathe, we do movement, and we learn how to use our senses. People spend time in nature. We salute different directions and honor the land. Um, Using the body, using the space to create different interactions is a part of it too. So it's a really holistic approach, integrated approach that I love to bring in so that they just get out of that like everyday box situation that they might unconsciously fall into.
Yeah, and that environment is important. I think the minute you bring people into a typical hotel conference room and you put out your flip chart and your markers and you fire up the PowerPoint, it just becomes a particular thing. Nature sounds good. What's happiness to you?
Happiness is a state of being. Uh, And I am learning to experience it as a choice. I use many times in this podcast, maybe the word choice, but it comes to that. I quickly became aware that the things that I thought will make me happy aren't the sources of my happiness. I would chase a role, I would chase money, I would chase a relationship, only to have maybe a temporary experience, but then feeling exactly the same as I started. There's a subtle level of anxiety, sometimes very pronounced, sometimes kind of in the background, but it's always there. And it's this notion that I just can't be where I am. There's something wrong. There's something missing. I just got to get to this next thing. I got to achieve something else. I'm not fill in the blank. And I thought that's just insane that I live my life like that, and we normalize that. We think that's the way to go. And I believe that's not the way to live our lives. I believe there's a different way, which is openness. I think happiness and openness is really aligned for me. It's a state of taking a deep breath and being open to what life is presenting in front of me. You shared a really good example with me just before we had this call, how a difficult situation at work can, be a really challenging situation, but at the same time offer an opportunity that you weren't aware of. So I think when we're open, when even life is hard, we're also open to experience the other side of it, which then creates a lot of growth and satisfaction and anything that you didn't know that you needed. So, um, Yeah, that I think when think about happy, I see it like my face is relaxed, my hands are open, and I'm just ready to face what's in front of me and choose to be happy.
And it sounds like you've chosen very carefully and you've made life and career choices to bring in more of that happiness into your life. In terms of winning and having goals and the satisfaction from achieving goals, do you have some winning targets?
Mm.
What does winning mean to you?
I'm gonna sound like a broken record, Greg, answering this question, but yeah.
As long as it's a good record, we can keep playing it again.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I was pretty much goal oriented, plan oriented in my earlier career for sure. And I don't discount the value of that and the necessity in certain situations. But I would say there's a way of living, there's a way of winning um, that comes from this openness concept that I mentioned. And we're human, we're going to make plans, we're going to have all these ideas and strategies. But I think holding it really lightly so that you can maneuver, you can see what else is there instead of being in a tunnel vision in your own plan. Really open to what life is bringing in front of you, I think is an incredible winning strategy. To give you an idea, there are times that in my business, I plan and I just forced and forced and nothing really happened. And when I allowed and let go and put my attention into other things, such as, developing relationships or focusing on myself, then things that I didn't even dream of just popped up, it's seemingly out of nowhere. And it's just a way of, I think, allowing being more open and allowing life to present me opportunities. So I would say winning is being aligned with life's flow, saying yes to what's in front of you. And although it's not always what you want, you can always win.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, the analogy I give people when I'm kind of asking that question is that you might decide in your life that you love playing football. You get so much joy and pleasure from being out on that pitch, kicking the ball to each other and all of that. But without those goalposts, which bring purpose and that enjoyment and those moments of elation and satisfaction that you get from all of that hard work putting that ball into the back of the net. And that's what I kind of mean a little bit by winning. And I know in those organizations with you, you try to bring, I think, a better life, and you try to change people's lives as individuals and collectively with the work that you do. So is winning a little bit, in your own head, doing that in more organizations? And like, I'm sure once you've had a successful workshop, there must be a moment where it crystallizes for you everything that you're doing, where you can absolutely see the benefit of it in front of you. People getting along and smiling and relaxed and all that kind of thing. So in that context, would you have a different version of winning? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think in that sense is doing what I meant to be doing, following that purpose that I,
Yeah.
discovered within myself. So, but once that purpose got clear, uh, sticking to it was a decision, right? Like
Yeah.
I could have at any point just tried to do other things to make money or feel unsafe and go back to my old role. I could have done all of that. I think there's something about really following that purpose. And even when it's not easy, and when you see the feedback, just like what you said in the room, how people are being impacted, what people are experiencing, that's the greatest confirmation for me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's
Yeah.
winning to me for sure.
That must be wow. They must be wow moments when you witness them.
Oh, yeah.
Do you get to see your folks a bit now? Do you travel back, or do they come out to you, or how does that work?
Yeah. I go pretty often. Try to go twice a year. I consider that often, I guess.
Yeah.
Actually, we're about to go. My fiance and I are getting married in June in Turkey, so we're going to be there for a while. I'm excited for that.
Congratulations. Do you have your dress picked out and all that kind of stuff, do you?
Uh, Most things are ready. The rest of it, just like what I was saying, I'm just trusting the universe.
Yeah, we were at a wedding the weekend just past, and we had a lovely time. Some good friends of ours got married. It was really nice. I've one last big question for you, and yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're going to come back to me with. Actually, I'm never sure with this question because I get all sorts of random answers, and a lot of them are just really wonderful. What was your best day ever?
It's an interesting question. Um, my best day, I had an experience. You could call it like a meditational state. And in that state, I have experienced such gratitude for everything that we're giving. It was a moment of experiencing nature, like this idea of everything is interconnected, everything is supporting each other in collaboration, and I'm part of it. And nature is giving to me so much. The beauty and the food and the air, everything that I need is just right here. And I can't describe the amount of heart opening and gratitude that I felt in that moment. It's just clarified why I'm here, what am I doing? And it still comes back to me when I'm down and not feeling gratitude. My day gets like kind of mundane. And I just look out and I see a tree and it reminds me of that moment. It just, blew up all these limitations that I was holding, my anxiety. So that moment was really, really beautiful and memorable for me.
Where did it happen?
I was in Thailand.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah. And it is an incredible setting. Obviously, Thailand is a beautiful, beautiful
yeah, yeah.
place.
Perfect.
Mm.
Gizem, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
been so wonderful to talk to you, and I know I got a lot from the conversation. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn bio, if that's okay, on the notes
Yeah,
to the
that's great.
podcast. Perfect. Listen, have a fantastic day,
Thank you so
and
much. Thank you for
the
having
very,
me.
very best of luck at your wedding. Have a wonderful
Thank you.
time with your family and your dad and your mom and everything else. Yeah, so enjoy. Take it easy.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.